Hi everybody, it's time for the next episode in my updated for 2024 Total New Starters Beginner's Guide to DayZ Console Community Server Modding. A lot of the stuff I talk about applies to PC as well, of course. So in this video, we're going to be talking about how to boost the loot on your server. So in effect, how to make it maybe easier to survive, easier to find food or weapons or clothes, that sort of thing. Very helpful for new players, and maybe one of the main reasons why people buy community servers is so that you can have a boosted loot server. Before we start though, just remember that in the description below this video you'll find a link to this playlist. So this playlist is all of the videos. By the time you come to look at it, there'll be some more on there as well, so you can look through here and pick the subjects that you want to learn about and watch them there. There'll also be a previous video and a next video link as well, because I have tried to record these in some sort of logical order, so that if you were new to DayZ modding, or even you've got like a new server and wanted to go through the steps that you would probably do in kind of a logical order, that you could work through them that way. Also, there'll be plenty of links to the different resources that we're going to be using in this video as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at three methods for doing this. We're going to look at using a website that is going to create the file for us. We're going to look at my GitHub repositories, where I've already done some files with boosted loot that you can use. And then we're also going to look at how you do it manually by editing the XML file. Okay, so obviously go over to Nitrado, log in, go on the web interface and get over to your website. And what we're interested in here is going to the file browser, and then we're going to go to the DayZ XB missions. If it's an Xbox, it'll be DayZ PC missions. If it's a PlayStation, just be, I think, DayZ missions if it's a PC server. And then this is a Chernarus server, so we're going to go into Chernarus Plus. If it was a Livonia server, it would say Enoch. If it's the new map, which will be coming out later in 2024, early 2025, I'm not sure what that will say. Maybe it'll say Frostline or something like that. So we go into here. And then we go into the DB directory, which is this one here. And then what we're interested in is the types.xml file. So what we're going to do, we're going to download this file. So we're going to click this button here. We're going to download it to our local PC, like that. And then we're going to go into the folder. So there it is. Now, as you can see, Windows has renamed mine to Types 6 because I've downloaded lots of different types. So what we're going to do, we're just going to cut that out of there. And then I've got a pre-prepared empty folder that we're just going to paste it into. And let's just turn this back into just types. There we go. And then what we're going to do as well is we're going to copy it and we're going to paste it. So that is now our backup. So no matter what happens, if we make an error or something like that, we've always got a backup that we can roll back to if we're not quite sure what's happening. Other essential tools that you'll need for this are Notepad++. I'll put a link in the description of this video, and we're going to make sure we validate the files as well. So let's go over to DayZboosters.com. This fantastic free website that you can use to do lots of different things, but one of the coolest is types boosting. So if you click on that one, here we go. And it's quite simple to do. There's preloaded files on here already. Please navigate and find your types.xml you wish to set a boost factor for, and then we drag and drop it into this box. Let's go to that folder. Let's get our types. Let's just drag it into there. That's there, and we just click on next. Set a factor between 1 and 100. So this is the amount of boost that you want to have on. I would suggest just start off with doubling the loot. When it comes to DayZ modding, in my opinion, often less is more, even when it comes to having a boosted loot server, because it doesn't take much for a server to go from incredibly vanilla difficult to be incredibly easy, where there's way too much loot everywhere. So just go to double, I would say, to start off with, and you're going to test this on your server. Also, if you've previously looked at, I think it's the video before this one, where I showed you how to change the spawn loadout of your characters, so when your survivors spawn in, they've actually got some stuff. Well, they don't need all this help, so just try 2 times. Here we've got Chernarus, so we click on next. And then we can choose specific things to choose. So when you pick specific types below, the focus will be entirely on those selections. This means we'll enhance only the items you choose here. Don't worry if you don't select anything special. We'll boost your items as usual, considering any exclusions you've already set. So, for example, if you only wanted to boost weapons, click that. Only boxed ammo, only loose ammo, only magazines. Now, I would imagine as time goes on, you may well get some more options. Now, for our case, we're going to boost everything, so we're just going to click next. Now, what you can do now is that you can take some exclusion offs, but only if you haven't added any inclusion. So if on the previous bit we just did, you didn't select anything, we could change something off. So for example, what we could do now is we could exclude clothing, because you could say, well, actually, I think there's enough clothing in DayZ as it is. So I'm happy with having vanilla clothing, but I do want more weapon attachments. I do want more seeds. I do want more vehicle parts. I do want more miscellaneous items. And again, I think there will be more bits sort of added to this. So now we click next. So if you're happy with your selections, please submit below. So we click submit. There we go. Types boosted successfully. Click below to download your processed file. So click on download, and that will now download. So let's have a look in there. So there it is, types 2 times. So let's copy that. Let's put it in our folder that we've got. Let's paste it in there. So as you can see, they've named it something else, which is good. Now, this is where we can get a bit of practice in. So although DayZ Boosters does have its own XML validator there, and you could use that one. It's easy to use. We're just going to use xmlvalidation.com as well. So please copy your XML document here or choose file. So we're just going to click on choose file. We're going to go to DayZ modding, test files for video. There are types 2 times, and we're just going to test this. It's always a good best practice to validate anything that's been messed around with. So no errors were found. So as far as we're concerned, there's no errors in this XML document. What we can do now as well is I'm just going to right click it and I can go edit with Notepad++, and I'm just going to have a look through the file now. I'm very familiar with things like the types.xml, so just by looking through this I can see, okay, yeah, absolutely, these are doubled, these values. And say something like the AK-74, you know, it's gone from 8 to 16 and the minimum's gone from 6 to 12. Don't worry, I will be talking about this in detail and a little bit more. It is a big difference between enabling people to find things. Just doubling the amount of loot on a server makes a massive, massive difference. Now, what you have to be very careful of is that if you boosted loot too much, say you went to 4 times or 6 times of everything and didn't exclude stuff, or didn't just focus on, say, weapons, you can break your server. And so the program that's running your server, DayZserver.exe, and something called the CLE, the Central Loot Economy, which is basically the database of stuff that is on your server, that can become overwhelmed with too much stuff, and then that can then lead to a problem where the nothing spawns in, or you get lots of the same item, or the server becomes laggy, all sorts of different problems. So please, 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 when you use these sort of tools and you think, oh, we can have 10 times as many guns, don't do that. You don't need to do that. You know, the best thing to do, if you want people to have easily find guns, change the fresh spawn loadout so they've got a gun then, and then just boost up the guns a little bit and work it that way. Okay, so we're pretty happy now. Yeah, that file, you know, looks good. So all we need to do now is we just need to rename this to type so we can upload it. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to rename this types here by left clicking it and put types. I'm going to call that types original. So we've got types original, types copy, which is the backup, and then we've got types 2 times. So now I'm just going to left click that, or you could right click rename, press enter. So that's now just a types.xml. So all we need to do now is we go back to our server. We're in the DB directory already, and we just click on upload file. We're already in the correct folder, but you'd have to navigate to that folder. Click on types, click on open. That uploads that. And then all we need to do is click restart server, and these changes will then start to take effect. Now, with something like this, where we're boosting the amount of things on the server, that will start to take place fairly quickly. You'll start to find more stuff in pretty short order. When we're doing other changes to our server, sometimes things can take quite a long time. And the next video doing this series will be about how we can change some settings to help things change quicker. Because the problem that happens with DayZ servers is that changes to the CLE, changes to the central loot economy, the database of items that are on your server, that stops churning, so it stops despawning and respawning things when there's nobody on the server. The server goes to sleep in effect. So if you make some changes and there's nobody on the server will just say, well, there's nobody here, there's no point doing anything, so it would go to sleep. What we can do is we can change that, though, so the server stays awake for a bit longer after someone's gone, so that you get these changes churning through the system and you get this spawning and respawning of stuff. However, with this one we don't need to worry about that, and that will be the next video that we look at, I think, in the description. So there we go, we've now got a double boosted loot server, apart from clothes. So how absolutely simple is that? So big thanks to DayZ Boosters for creating such an amazing resource and making it so easy to use. So let's go on to something else now. Now, a bit of a plug for my file. So what I do is hopefully what I still do by the time you come to watch this video, is every update, or before every update, I produce a set of server files that will give you a boosted loot experience. And they include a boosted loot types.xml, and these are on my GitHub repository. So what I'll do, in the description below this video, I'll put a link to my GitHub repository. I won't do a link to the exact files because these change. So for example, at the moment, at the time of recording this video, DayZ is on DayZ Update 1.24, so you'd have to use the DayZ 1.24 files. Remember, the way that you know what you're working on is if you look at the version number here, that's the version number of the server, and so that means that you should be using 1.24 files. So at the moment we're on 124. In a couple of weeks' time we're going to get 125, so I've got them ready to go for people to use. If you're confident already with things like the XML files and the JSON files, and maybe you're familiar with kind of what they do, what you can do is, say with the 125 files, when that goes live, you can click on code, click on download zip, download all of these files, unzip them, and then read through the README. And that tells you what you get if you use all of the files. And basically these are very, very easy to install. All you do is find where these files are on your server. So the CFG events balls, CFG play gameplay, CFG spawnable types, they're all in the root mission folder. Kind of when you go into missions and you go into Churnerus or Enoch, that first directory there, you just upload those over the top of the ones. Then events, globals, messages and types, they're in the DB directory, and you just upload them, restart your server, and that's it. So they're super easy to use, and I kind of highly recommend that if you want the features that these files give you, which is boosted loot, mostly pristine items, weapons with magazines, weapons with suppressors, weapons with scopes, complete vehicles, vehicles with stuff in the boot, more MVGs, more NBC stuff, a really good, easy experience for people to learn DayZ and to get stuck into building and all that sort of stuff. I highly recommend you use them. I've used this sort of style of boosted server file for a good 3 years now, the same idea. I used to call it the hunting, fishing, building files, but they work, they're a good start, and then you could also edit them in the future if you wanted to, so do those. Okay, so next, let's look at actually doing it manually. Okay, so how do we do it manually? So I don't kind of recommend you start off with doing this, but let's go through. So we're going to open up Types Original. I'm going to edit this with Notepad++. Here we go. So here we have our Types Original.xml. So as I've previously said, your server is run by DayZ server.exe that's running, but the flavor of the server, the type of DayZ experience that you want, is controlled by the mission files. So let's go back and have a look. So let's go back to here. here we go. So we go into, so it's a churner server we're running. So we go into here, and these are the mission files, and they control things like the amount of loot, whether loot spawns in pristine, what items spawn in with, so what magazines, guns spawn in with, how many zombies spawn in, how many bears spawn in, what loot spawns in which buildings, all this sort of stuff. So we can edit an awful lot of these, and the one that mainly controls loot and the amount of loot is types.xml. So as we go in, we have a typical entry. Now it's in alphabetical order, and each entry starts off with an opening. I'm going to call it a statement. Let's call it an opening statement. I don't know what the proper name is, but so it starts with type name equals, and then you have the name. Now the name we refer to this as the class name of the item. And then if we go to the bottom of this entry, it finishes with that sort of statement. So they put \type. So it opens by saying type and then closes with \type. And so that entry there is the whole entry for this particular class type, which is the ACOG optic. So the ACOG optic is the, and I hope I get this right, it's the optic that has a red dot on the top, and then it has a 4x scope underneath, and you kind of flick between the two. So it's really nice little thing. So and it's the first one. So nominal value of 10. So what this means is on the server there should be 10 of them spawning in at any one time. So there should be scattered around the map, depending on a few other things. There should be 10. Now the lifetime of the item is how long a particular item will hang around lying on the floor or on a shelf somewhere, on a table somewhere, before the game says that's been there long enough, let's get rid of it. So it'll take it away, and then it'll spawn something else in, or it might spawn that somewhere else. In DayZ, the loot isn't in the same place all the time. It keeps disappearing and reappearing. Not when players are around. Players have got to be a distance away, and the game is constantly looking at different parts of the map and saying, okay, that ACOG optic's been there for 14,400 seconds. Nobody's bothered with it. Let's take it out. Let's put something else there, or maybe nothing there. And it's constantly churning through all of this stuff. And the restock time is similar. So that's how much time it takes between each one spawning in. The minimum is the time at which this respawn process starts to take effect. So there should be 10 of them on the server. But when it goes down to 9, the server doesn't immediately go, right, spawn another one in. It waits until they get down to 6, and then it starts spawning them in. Then we have quant min and quant max. Now, these figures only apply to items that would normally have something else inside them. So, for example, a petrol can, or a weapon magazine, or a bottle of tablets, or a bottle of water. They have something in them. And you would then have a percentage quantity here. Now, being a scope for a gun, this one doesn't have anything in them. Now, some scopes do have batteries in them, I'll give you that, but that's not handled in the types.xml like this. So it says -1 because -1 means to the server, just ignore this value, it doesn't have anything inside it. If it was something that had something inside it, you could then have a percentage. So let's say this was a weapon magazine. In fact, let's go and have a look at a mag. So do Control F. Let's look for mag. There we go. So mag. So here we go. So there's the magazine for the 1911 pistol. It's the 7-round one. So we can see quant min 20, quant max is 100. So what that's telling the game is when you spawn in one of these magazines, spawn it in between 20% and 100% full. So if it spawns in 100% full, it'll have 7 bullets in. If it's 20% full, it will be probably 1 bullet or 2 bullets. And we can edit that as well. So, for example, if you wanted these to be all full, we could do something like that. Quant min 99, quant max 100. And then save, and then we would upload that, and that weapon would then spawn in like that. Let's just undo that, though. Okay, so let's go back to the top. So our ACOG optic is -1 because it doesn't apply. Cost, ignore this. I think it's an old setting. The idea with this is you could tell the server how important it was to spawn certain things in. So it could be, for example, that weapons were 100, and you could say that maybe clothes were 50, but that we don't use that anymore, so kind of ignore that. Oop, and don't type anything in. Now, this is a really important section here, the flags. So what do these mean? So if we start from the back, we have dynamic event loot equals 0. Now in all of this, 0 means false, 1 means true, or 0 means no, and 1 means yes. So dynamic event loot would mean that the loot spawns in a dynamic event. So a dynamic event in DayZ is something like a helicopter crash, or a police incident, or a military convoy, or a train crash, or when one of the stopped trains. The classic one that we tend to think of is always helicopter loot. If this is 0, this means that this is ordinary. We tend to call it ground loot, even though it's not always on the ground. Sometimes it's on tables, sometimes it's on shelves, that sort of stuff. So it'll just spawn in normally. If this was set to 1, or yes, it would only spawn in the relevant helicopter crash, or police incident, roadblock, or a military convoy, or something like that. Crafted. So this is another one. So what you're finding in types.xml, there are certain items that don't have a nominal value. So the nominal value will be 0, and their minimum will be 0. It will be something like a improvised backpack, for example, and the crafted will be 1. So that means that item is made. It has to be in the types.xml file, because anything that isn't in the types.xml file, when the server restarts, will disappear. It'll never spawn in. So that's what crafted is for. So if you ever see crafted on there, it means something has to be made. And that's why the nominal and the minimum will be 0, because they don't spawn in normally. Then we have count in player, count in map, count in hoarder, and count in cargo. So when we said there should be 10 of these on the server at any one time, the only way that the server is counting that number is there on count in map. If a player's got one, or it's in his backpack, or it's in a box somewhere, or in a barrel somewhere, or buried under the ground somewhere, the server will ignore these. So in effect, there can be a lot more than 10 ACOG optics on the server. There could be 50, because as someone picks it up and puts it in the backpack, the server then doesn't count that one to that nominal value. And so that is, so be very, very careful when you are editing this stuff, that you always make sure that count in map is set to 1. Okay, if you take that away, what will happen is the item that you have there will keep spawning and spawning and spawning. I made a mistake like that once with a couple of flags, and the people on my server kept messaging me saying that why is there flags everywhere? And I said, what are you talking about? He said, yeah, there's flags literally everywhere. So I spawned in on the server, had a look round, and lo and behold, there was these flags that had just taken over the central loot economy, because the server just wasn't counting them. It was just because counting map was 0, and none of the other things were on 1. So they kept spawning in and spawning in and spawning in. So it was quite funny. So I saw which ones they were, put counting map to 1, and then the server restarted, and they slowly started to disappear depending on the lifetime they had. Because remember, things don't spawn in immediately. It takes them a while to spawn in and spawn out, and that only happens when people are on the server. Now, what you could do is, if you want to make your server harder, you could actually count them on the player, count them in the hoarder, and count them in the cargo. And that would then mean, if you change these values to 1, for example, like that, what that would then mean is actually there's only ever really going to be 10 ACOG optics on the server, because the server's going to count all the ones that are on the map, all the ones that are in people's hands, all the ones that are in people's backpacks, and all the ones that are in barrels and boxes and caches underground and all that sort of stuff. So you're creating like more of a hardcore experience then. And that would kind of be up to you. But remember, always make sure that at least count in map is set to 1. So let's change that back. And then what you would do is simply go through and spend your time looking at things and going, oh, right, okay, I can adjust those. Actually, sorry, I'm jumping ahead of myself. Then we have category name underneath. So the ACOG optic is categorized as a weapon because it fits a weapon, and its usage name is military. So it's going to spawn in at military locations, so military tents, military barracks, military bases, all that sort of stuff. And that's it for the ACOG optic. Let's have a look at the ACOG optic 6 times actually underneath, because this has got another aspect to it. So normal is 5, minimum is 2. So if we wanted to have more of these, we could say, so let's 10 of those, and let's put the minimum up to 12. The minimum must always be less than the nominal, and then it's counted in the map. It's a weapon military. Now it's also police, because you would put this on the Scout or the Pioneer Rifle. Now this is interesting. So you've got value tier 4 and value tier 3. So what does this mean? Well, I'll tell you what, let's go over to I Survive. I'll put a link to this in the description below this video, and let's put on loot tier overlay. There we go. So this is Churnerous, and these colours are different loot tiers. So loot tier 1 is the green one, loot tier 2 is blue. Let's zoom out a bit. 3 is yellow and 5 is red. So if we go back to our file, we can see that actually the 8-coal optic 6 times only spawns in military and police locations excuse me, that are in tier 3 and tier 4. So they're going to be spawning in this yellow area and this red area. So what you could do is, if you wanted to spread these around the map more, you could simply delete those like that, or you could add tier 2. You didn't need as well, so you could like have tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. Obviously you don't need to have tier 1, because you would just delete them as well. Interestingly as well is, if you wanted the ordinary ACOG optic to be more difficult to find, you could copy that, and underneath military you could put tier 3 and tier 4 as well. Let's edit and undo that. Just bear in mind though that if, for example, the ACOG optic 6 times is in tier 4 and tier 3, and we add tier 2 to it, or we take the tiers together, or take the tiers out altogether, so that they spawn in all military and police locations all over the map, unless we actually increase the nominal and the we need to adjust that down, don't we? And the minimum, it's actually going to become harder to find the ACOG optics 6 times, because if originally, say, 10 of them were in this area here, if we then allow them to spawn everywhere and there's still only 10 of them, they're going to be more spread out and they're going to be harder to find. So bear that in mind as well. It's not always obvious a change you make will have the effect that you want to have it. And then you can scroll down, and so there's the AK-101. As you can see, very rare weapon. There's only 2. We could put up to 4. 1. It counts in the map. It's not dynamic event loot. Now, I'll tell you what, let's do a little bonus tip, as Robo would say here. So here we have the AK-101 Black. So originally, in DayZ, there were spray cans as well. And if you took a gun and combined it with a spray can, you could change the colour of certain guns. And so, for example, here we have the AK-101 Black. Now, you don't have spray cans anymore, but the guns still work if you spawn them in. But as you can see, there's no nominal value, and there's no minimum value, so they won't spawn in. So what we can do is, if we want the AK-101 Black to spawn in, the easiest way to get it to spawn is just copy the underneath bit from the AK-101 like that. So we copy all of that bit underneath the first type and before that bit, and we just type that, select it over that one, right click, paste, and we've just pasted that over the top of there. Nice and easy. We do the same for the green one. Paste. There we go. And now, in military tier 4 locations, you've got a chance of finding a green AK-101 or a black AK-1 or a normal AK-101. So we've increased the numbers that way. And there's a few guns have this, the AK-74, the M4A1, I think the 74U, the Mosin has a camo version as well. When you're doing this though, and when you do see things that have nominal values of 0, again, just double check that it's not crafted. In fact, that's a good example. So with the AK-74U, it says it's crafted, okay, because originally it was, but it's not anymore. So again, that would be a case of, like we did before, is you would copy from underneath the type and before the end type argument, and then paste that over there, like that. And so now the AK-74U Black will spawn in. And this might seem like a real drag, and it's going to take you a while. It will take you a couple of hours to do the first time you do it, but just scroll through. And it's nice to do this because it gets you familiar with how the files work. Let's just save that as we go along. And you're really getting your hands into the dirt of the central loot economy and the files that kind of run it behind. And yeah, you'll see things like, so for example here, so the AK suppressor is a weapon, it's normally on shelves, and you'll only find it in the contaminated area. So that's in the permanent gas zones. You've got military, you'll see town, you'll see village, you'll see coastal, all these sorts of things that you can mess around with and change. So there's an interesting entry there. So there's the mushroom. Now the mushrooms are 0 and the minimum is 0. That's because the mushrooms spawn in as part of an event. So as you're wandering around, the game sees you wandering around, and near you it will spawn in the odd mushroom. So the same way it spawns in like apples and pears and plums when you're in near fruit trees and that sort of stuff. So this sort of thing you don't really want to mess with. You just want to leave that. They say crafted, but it's not really crafted. It comes from an event. Alarm clock blue, alarm clock green, and it does seem, the first time you do this, it can really seem like a real drag, but I quite enjoy doing it. I sit there with a cup of coffee and a can of Coke, and I work my way through, and I do it every time there's an update. I compare my files and I add the new bits in. Once you've done it a couple of times, it actually becomes second nature, because you kind of know the stuff that you want to change and the stuff that you're interested in. So there we go. Once we've done that, we'd save, and then we would go through here. So we know our one was types original, aren't we? So what we need to do is just change the name of this one, types times 2, and then we would just change that back to the name types. Probably going to have a bit of a ippy fit now. And then we would go to our server, go into the DB directory where the types is. We would say upload file, upload that. Oh, actually, sorry. Take a step backwards. We go to the validate XML section. Click on XML validation there just to refresh it. Choose the file. Type open. Validate it. No errors are found. Brilliant. Now we can go back to a server, upload file, click on types, click on open. That would upload that. I'm not going to do it now though. And then we would restart the server and the changes would start to take effect. You can rename files up here as well. So if you accidentally uploaded your types 2 times to here, you could just rename it. And you could also actually make copies here as well to make backups. So there we go. Hopefully you find this video useful. 3 ways of boosting the loot on your server. DayZ boosters, which I highly recommend. My GitHub repositories, which kind of take you to the next step of doing lots of other things as well, but they're a little bit more complicated on the surface because there's a lot more files to upload. But just read the README. It tells you what you're going to get, and you just upload these files over the top of the existing ones and restart your server, and Bob's your uncle. You've got a nice boosted loot server. And we've also had a look at how you can look at the actual XML files, the types.xml file, to individually go in and adjust the values yourself. There are other ways of doing this. There's other programs that are out there that you can load into, and they make it look like a spreadsheet and things like that. But I think these 3 ways, they're good enough to get you started. So if you found this video useful, hit like. If you want to see more of the same, press subscribe. And of course, I'll see you again soon.